Once again, welcome to this webinar. As I just explained, the idea is to bring more transparency also to the to the community of cybersecurity providers. The agenda for today is relatively simple. I make a very short introduction. I guess you guys being in the call right now, you already had contact with me, so I keep it very short. And you can start also during me presenting to put your questions in a chat. Steve will help me with this so that at the end of the session today, we have sufficient time to go into your questions, concerns, maybe criticism, answer all these points and everything what we might not finish today in this 1 hour. I promise to basically provide the answers then later on, and to put it also together with the video then online so that everyone who is not able to join today can have a look afterwards. And as said, a brief introduction. You had contact with me already. My name is Philipp. I have Steve, one of our senior solution managers from CyberCompare, with me in the call. Steve is with CyberCompare for more than 2 years already. And I'm one of the co-founders, being there obviously then from the beginning, which is 4 years now. Me and my team basically takes care about the delivery of the projects to the customers. Me and my colleagues, the solution managers, basically work on this project, which I'm presenting right now as a typical project. Otherwise, I'm 20 years with Bosch already. I'm an IT guy by profession, coming from the field of connected industry, Industry 4.0, just as a rough profile about myself. But let's start the more interesting thing. CyberCompare itself, also to you guys, well known. Our core value, and this is what we also always underline towards our customers, is that we are an independent platform. Means we really want to bring high value to our end customers, but also to maintain and have a great connection to the cybersecurity providers. It doesn't exclude it from each other, those two values from my point of view. But it's of course the case whenever we are analyzing offers, information which we receive from the provider side, we always come from a neutral standpoint and bring transparency into the game. That's the key target, that the customer, our end customer, receives the transparency and can take, I always call it, well-informed decisions based on our transparency. We also, provide some recommendations and do an offer comparison. Today, my example is a SOC project. Then we usually also work with, stars like, from Amazon from 1 to 5, where we say, well, based on our experience, the price, performance ratio, other criteria which are relevant for the customer, we would recommend to look more deeper into provider A and provider B. But at the end, it's up to the customer to decide what she wants to do with the information. And of course, also the final purchasing decision is done by the customer, him, herself. That's very important. And from time to time this happens. I also recently had a project where there's no decision at the end, where although we put a lot of effort in, the customer had to pay for our service as well. They came to the conclusion that they're not going right now for purchasing this cybersecurity solution. Also, this of course happens, and even more, I know, a bit disappointing for the provider community then, because statistically no one wins in those situations. But that's real life, and this is also what you experience in the market when you're all by yourself. Customer feedback, that's always very important. We have 3 customers where we are able to talk about openly as a reference customer: Puma, Stuttgarter Straßenbahn, public transportation here in Stuttgart, southern Germany, and PWO, which is an automotive supplier listed in a stock market. Basically, in the meantime, we're covering all the sectors, the industry sectors, In the beginning, CyberCompare was focusing very much at companies a bit similar, like the Bosch company itself, often automotive suppliers, machinery builders, equipment, etc. But at the meantime, it's really a full-blown over all industries, inclusive banking, and the public sector is growing for our portfolio now, because they have to run official public tenders, and there our CyberCompare approach is of great support. Yeah, this is also what we do: offer comparisons, tender management, and also gap analysis. We call it diagnostics, often a starting point, also something which we do in collaboration and cooperation with banks, with insurance companies. Like we have a partnership with the Commerzbank, for example. And for their customers, we conduct those kind of diagnostics, evaluate the status quo in the maturity level with regards to cybersecurity, the fields of actions, and often as a next step, we come to the parts 1 or 2, where then the client says, yes, we actually never did a pen test. In the afternoon after this meeting, I'm part of a pen testing project where the customer never did a pen test and asked us for support. What are typical vendors, good vendors we could work with, prices, etc., approaches, scope that we support. And it could be also that they come and say, well, we need a new EDR solution. Mr. Pelkmann, you and your team, can you support us running a small offer comparison, a tender for doing so? So how does a typical project then look like? Some of the slides are in German because also it's very, very easy to explain. 99% of our customers are based in the German-speaking markets, Germany, Austria, Switzerland. Yeah, that's very clear at the moment. That's the scope of CyberCompare with regard to the market. But it shouldn't be a problem for you today in the meeting, because I will explain. This is a SOC project, Security Operations Center / System zur Angriffserkennung, SZA. We often work, and this is very much appreciated by our customers, in modules. Yeah, and this is a typical approach. Of course, we are flexible, but this is a typical project where we start with module 1, doing this kind of diagnostics I just explained, and develop a target concept. Because we figured out over time, if we start too early talking about the requirements, we are too much fixed towards maybe potential technical solution or the service. And especially in this context of Security Operations Center, there are so many options available that it's make really first sense to analyze what's the status quo, why they want to go in this direction, what's their target, what's also their internal capability. Yeah, how big is their IT team? What are maybe other parallel projects they're running? And then rather give some recommendations. Is it really like a full-blown classical ZM SOC approach, or should we rather make a focus first on the endpoint security solution, find something suitable there, and maybe start with a managed service based on the endpoint security, for example, and then later do the onboarding towards a bigger SOC approach. Module 2 is typically, not always, then the creation of the requirement specification. As said, in public tenders, it's of course slightly different. It's a bit more formal there towards the classical private industry, but we can support both approaches very well. In module 3 is then highly depending on the approach. Public tenders obviously run via the platforms, via the public platforms. We rather support the background, for example, when there are provider questions, and then the analysis for the other private customers from the private sector. We have our own tender tool, which I will show in a minute. And module 4, if the customer wants, we are also happy to support during the implementation, but that's not classical CyberCompare business. Typically, our invoice based on a fixed price is sent after module 3. Just, I'm the slide deck contains a lot of slides. I want to give you some impressions today. Yeah? This is, for example, we have an own internal application where we run the diagnostics. Well, yes, you can see we have like almost 50 questions which we ask and to basically analyze the situation. Those kind of diagnostics obviously doesn't replace an audit. It doesn't replace a security assessment deep dive. These would be all projects which we rather run via our classical business model, means we compare maybe providers which are offering those kind of services. But this small scale diagnostic is very successful, and I think we had now more than 350 of those diagnostics in the past. This is how one page of the results looks like. We have a spider chart. We have a benchmark where we compare the results in 10 security dimensions, starting from security organization, independent audits, asset transparency, network security, reaction, business continuity, capabilities, and where we derive the fields of action. In this example here, the blue parts are always, the things I don't want to share today because they are original documents from real customers. And here, obviously, measure number 5 was to look into a multi-factor authentication. The target concept, which I've mentioned, also here, the content is not so interesting for you today, but I want to give this clear signal also to you that we are not, blindly just following the demand of the customer. We are really trying to start with some consulting approach to really understand the current situation, the capabilities. This is what I mentioned before, and then come up with a proposal, with a conclusion regarding the next step. Is it really, in this case, in this example, the ZM-SOC approach, or is it something else? So we look into the organizational situation, the IT setup, the security setup. For example, this is another slide I just took out of a typical target concept. Now we compare then what would a more ZM-based approach bring in combination or in difference towards an XDR approach, pros and cons, etc., that we have a good base for the decision in this early phase of a project. What's always part of this first discussions is also, of course, to look into the commercial part. Since we run already more than, I think in the meantime, it's more than 700 projects. Of course, we have a tremendous database of information, what typical projects, could be pen testing, incident response, tools like ISMS, but here in this example, again, ZM-SOC approaches, cost. This example is for 1,000 endpoints. And we discuss with the customer looking also to take a firm decision, and not only at the technical advantages and disadvantages, as you have seen on the slide before with ZM and XDR comparison, but of course also with regards to the different price approaches. And from my point of view, this is also important for the providers. On the one side, I know full transparency, sometimes you might hesitate a bit. On the other side, this brings the big benefit that in the early phase, the customer is already, aware about the budget she needs to reserve. And you will definitely know these experiences from the, let's say, call it open market without CyberCompare, that you will sometimes end up in a situation where the customer says, well, very nice approach, but we don't have the money for that. This we try to clarify early. Does it help in 100% of the cases? Obviously not. This is slide, for example, for customers where we're talking about also the operations model. Some have already the internal analysts. They even have maybe an internal SOC, and they just want to combine it with an external approach. Maybe they have a shared ZM platform they want to use, and this is basically also where we try to make the pros and the cons transparent so that we have a good base for the way forward. Also trying to visualize, sometimes we have fantastic experts on the as a counterpart on the customer side. Sometimes, and this is not blaming, but that's just reality, we have maybe the head of IT, but the IT is only consisting of maybe 8 or 10 people, a busy guy doing all the things in parallel and not really expert. So we are also trying to simplify also for him getting then the management approval. This is what we focus on as CyberCompare. Next module would be then talking about, just looking at the time, we are in time, looking at the requirements. And I guess all of you in the call right now, you worked with us, so you know either the Excel sheets or in the meantime RFP 360. We still use sometimes the Excel sheets for those projects which are a bit special, where it's not worth it for everyone involved to set up the project in the tender platform RFP 360. But more and more we will migrate to this because it has big advantages also for the provider side. And of course, also here, very strong signal to you, give us feedback. You will have had those kind of questions even more often than we do. Sometimes questions might be very weird for you, or some questions are even not asked, and you might wonder why are you not asking those questions. Give us feedback, because then we can evolve, then we can constantly get better with every project. Ask the right question, which makes you easier to also understand the real need, the real requirements of the customer, and basically also put very clear answers towards the requirements. This is just an excerpt from an incident response retainer requirement sheet. At the end, all of them, they look somehow similar, and as said, the tendency is that we move more and more towards RFP 360. Based on the requirements specification, then in the scenario where we are not in a public tender, but our customer is from the private sector, the customer expects from us a vendor long list, right? Of course, sometimes they had already pre-discussions and they already come with a list, and then their task is rather to validate this list. But the majority of the cases, I would say, is that the customer expects from us a long list, where we say, well, in this project, based on the requirements, based on the target where the customer would like to head to, we would suggest this 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever providers for the long list. We have for this an internal database, and this is an example for the whole area of SOC, MDR topic. You can see at the moment we have, for the German-speaking markets, 114 entries there. You can see by yourself. It's very, very simple, but also very effective, to be honest. And we know exactly, based on, for example, technology, we often have this scenario that the customer is, for example, very much Microsoft-based. Then, of course, it makes sense to directly filter on those those of the providers which also focus on Microsoft as an underlying technology, either on the CM or on the EDR, XDR side. But we do not only have this, flat lists. We also have what we call brain, the CyberCompare brain, where basically everything is brought together. All the data which we gather in the projects via RFP 360, for example, data which we have from the provider directory, and the project itself, then we have internally, and we can very effectively, efficiently search about this, and then can, for example, also come up with more sophisticated analysis when it comes to maybe a technical fit, maybe also the price point, etc. And based on basically these two sources, plus of course the experience of the solution consultant, the solution manager, we come up with a long list. Important for you here, we have also in our process, we have a clearly defined the process all the solution managers work through from CyberCompare, checkpoints. And this is, for example, a checkpoint. The provider list is always provided after 4 eyes principle check. So it's then the solution manager who invites, for example, Steve could invite me and say, Philip, we have a SOC project. I would suggest these 5 or 6 vendors. And then he would basically do an argumentation why. There might be some small adjustments, but that we ensure that from compliance perspective, this is clean. And as said, it's not decided by us. It's decided at the end of the day by the customer. I've mentioned a few times the RFP 360 tender platform. The one or the other guy from you has will know about it already. But this is how it looks for us. This is a screenshot I took a couple of days before. This was an RFI, a request for information in the context of ihrem platforms. There we had, as you can see, 13 proposals. And the big advantage for us is that also we can report very efficiently towards our end customer what's the status. Because usually we have between maybe 2, 3, 5 weeks of time for you answering all the questions we ask. And then we can see the progress, and maybe also if someone steps out early because of some specific reasons, we can maybe add someone else, or we decide to not add anyone. And we also can do the scoring in the tool. Scoring is an important part of our offer comparison, but I say it already now, not the only one. If you're not doing this in a tool, and I decided to rather show a screenshot how we did it in a classical way and how we do it in those cases where we are not working with RFP 360. It's very simple how everyone, you and me would do it. We value the must-have criteria. Depends a little bit on the project. Some do this with 100 points for must-have, should have with 50 points, nice to have with 30 points. In this project, I had it like 10, 5, and 3 points. And basically, I evaluate the answers by the providers. If it's a clear 100% fit, they get full points. If it's a clear no, or yes, but only in 2 years, then 0 points. And if it's in between, might be like 5 points in this example. When they say, for example, yes, we do this, but there's a small impact. We only can do this in those kind of cases. And then I need to basically evaluate, is it critical? Is it significantly? So maybe I just conduct 5 points, or is it so much negative for the customer that I evaluate this with 0 points? Of course, this is a crucial part of the offer comparison. We are very sensitive about this part. And important, and I say it later again, the customer receives all this information. And some really do controlling with us together. Go through the points, do a scoring by themselves, check the scoring, etc. And even if they don't, they all have all the information which we received during the project. That just also for compliance reasons, everything is really fine and documented. All the raw data. Of course, we also make it nice and fancy in the PowerPoint presentation, which is then received by the provider, by the customer, sorry. And we say it very clearly also in the explanation that you can see the closer the provider, which contains obviously an overlay here, the closer the provider is to the midpoint, the better. The black one is 100%. The dark blue is more than 95% scoring. It's not providing the result like the one who is closest should win. It's more an indication that we can see, okay, there are maybe 2 providers which are far outside. that we try to understand what's the reason for that. Sometimes it's just the case they, stopped answering after question number 50. And so the last, 20 questions have not been answered and the guy is on vacation or is sick. Then we might end up and say, well, the overall offer looks nice. I mean, the scoring obviously, sucks, but let's give this provider another chance. And because it's so important for the customer, once he's back from vacation, he gets a second chance to answer the missing part. Yeah, or there are really significant deficiencies, and then it's also more easy to say, well, maybe those two providers here, they are too far out of the scope. Let's concentrate on the other ones. It's an indication. It helps. It's not the final sequence. What are we showing to the customer? And I selected this screenshot to say it depends. In this project, we provided 95 slides just to show to you that details matter. And this is our core business, which we do every day. Yes, we summarize, and I will show how a summary looks like on the next slide. However, the customer receives all the details itself, because sometimes we then get the feedback, yeah, well, that was a high-level evaluation. No, we always try to really break it down and try to, put all the information which are available in a project. And it will never be 100% perfect, because some aspects might be always missing or whatever. But everything what we have, we try to bring in to make it very transparent, to make it comparable. But of course, at the end, it's also our task to consolidate the information again and put the customer in a situation where he or she can take this, what I mentioned, well-informed decision. Here, for example, a project which was somehow difficult. The customer talked already to several providers before, and our task was basically to structure it, to basically resend one harmonized requirement sheet and then to consolidate the answers. And I decided to, for example, add here this, how do we want to call it, this additional legend to explain. And you can see that basically no offer is really one-to-one comparable with another one, because this one basically contains the ihrem platform plus the EDR plus vulnerability management and Azure and even network traffic analysis, while the other one is basically just focusing on ihrem and optionally vulnerability management. Of course, we don't prefer those kind of situations too much. We like to really keep it comparable, also in the favor of the providers. But if the customer really would like to look at those kind of approaches, had talks before, we sometimes end up in the situation and then still try to bring out the best we can. We have the score, as you can see. In this, for example, yes, you also cannot really see a big differentiation. You might look, okay, 6% here after, what were the key reasons? And those key reasons we list here in the critical points area. We look at the prices, one-time costs. In this case, it was also cost over 4 years. We're looking, okay, what is the mid value? How much is it deviation? How much is the deviation from this mid-range? In this case, we did also a calculation. I think, exactly, it's written. It was like 1/3 scoring, 1/3 price, and 1/3 the size of the offering. So obviously, the size of this offering was, you can say, 100%. Nonetheless, the price was incredibly high. So in this case, overall, the ranking was place number 4, which is also just another indication. And then we come to the CyberCompare conclusion, and we say, well, we see ABC, and our fazit, our resume is at the end, we would suggest to consider provider A, B for the shortlist and getting in detailed discussions. This I've explained before, but I would like to repeat it. Everything what we do during a project, also the communication, the email flow between you and me is at the end zipped and sent in a structured form to the provider. Yeah. Of course, if there's a side note and you invite me for a beer, maybe I would exclude this email. But joke aside, this is also why we want and need to keep it very, focused, serious, this email, because everything is shared with a customer. One part which is very important for you, and where I also receive some criticism from time to time, and the point is taken. I clearly admit that we are here in this case, when it comes to feedback towards the providers, not where we want to be in average. Yeah, in some projects, this is managed very well. In some other projects, not perfectly yet, and we want to get better here. Because you will have the same situation as us. We do not win all our projects, obviously. Yeah. But the typical reaction of a customer is often to rather, I think ghosting is the word in the meantime, to not communicate anymore at some point. You never really know, okay, was it the pricing? Didn't they like me? Or did they forget about me? What's the reason behind? You don't know. And so we want to make this better for the providers, because we know and we value that you guys put effort in this. It's effort. It depends on the size, obviously, of the project, but it's real effort on your side. It's maybe hope, expectations, and maybe also sales targets behind this, and not maybe, definitely sales targets. So we really would like to provide you a precise feedback. What were the key criteria? What were maybe the strong points? What were the weak points? Obviously, sometimes this is difficult, because not in every project the customer positions himself very clearly and says, this is what I want, this is what I don't like, for example. But based on the offer comparison, we are in a position to give indications. What at the end, it was really a pure price decision. Or at the end, there was one provider who was a bit closer due to projects in the past, and the decision was based on this, or really some more technical driven reasons. We're trying to put transparency into that. And of course, it depends also a little bit on the situation of the customer, of the provider, how they perceive my feedback, or our feedback. And here to you guys, approach me when you have concerns here. When you say, well, we are waiting too long, or we just received an email like, okay, we didn't win, we lost, but no information. It's not bad intention of the solution managers or of myself. It's mainly, every one of us is 100% busy like you guys, and it's maybe forgotten on that day and then out of mind. You have a right to receive a valuable feedback. That's our target. Yeah. And as said, we are not yet 100% there. We need to improve. The next part I keep very short, otherwise we don't have time for the questions. The provider directory, I think this is known also in this community which is participating right now. We have, since late summer this year, also starter package. You can get listed at CyberCompare. It helps us to receive the basic provider information, because it's one of the most important things. The provider directory is not the base to participate in project. I know here and there it's still sometimes misunderstood, but we try to repeat and repeat and repeat it. You don't have to be part of the provider directory in order to participate in the projects. And there are enough proof points where we can easily prove this. Basically, every project we have participants which are not part of the provider directory. So everyone interested can start with the starter package. Everyone who would like to get listed and who would benefit from values which we put in, participating having joined interviews, having a blog article, receiving market insights. We can go for the advanced package, and we have now since late summer premium package. I leave it at this point. There are some more values, and of course we are happy if someone books the packages and that we have already such a big community, because to make it also here transparent, it helps us to invest more time on the provider side, because our customers expect from us that we know pretty well about the provider side, about new trends, new solutions, etc. But obviously they don't pay us for that. We get a fixed fee for the project, which is also independent of the total project volume. Of course, it's depending a little bit on the complexity of the project. But I mean, if a SOC is bought at the end for 1 million, for 10 million, or for 100,000, we get the same amount, more or less, you can say. And this gives us a little bit more freedom to interact with you, to have feedback sessions, more deep dives into your portfolio, etc. Because otherwise we have a little bit of cost issue on our CyberCompare side. We run events. The next one is mid of November. This is a virtual event. We're very successful in the past. Basically, the providers joining, they receive the leads of the event, and we try something out for the first time in April next year in Ludwigsburg, an on-site fair. If you're interested here, also drop me a note. We have support from the Bosch Board of Management, Tanja Rückert. We have speakers from our community like Puma, Miele, Bilfinger, etc. on site, and we calculate with minimum 100 potential customer companies joining. Will be a very nice event. So who is interested, drop me or Nicolina a short note. This is the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for participating, for joining. Let me know if you have any questions.